Welcome everybody. Let's start the session of today.
Today we are going to talk about one of the most mysterious, or maybe actually there is nothing strange about it, but it's just how the mind can work and how according to the mental process, how all these things is possible and can work. But this is one of the things that even the Buddha said it is difficult to understand and difficult to imagine. So a few things that the Buddha have mentioned before that it would be difficult to understand, which is one of them is karma. Exactly, we can understand the structure of how it works,
cause and
effect, but exactly how which karma leads to exactly which result, and this is very difficult to say or to understand. Only the Buddha with his wisdom, he can explain or he can know exactly. So another thing that is difficult to understand is jhana, which is the concentration, which is the power of concentration, the power of the mind. When it is trained into a very, very very high concentration, then there are some things that the mind can do, which is a little bit unimaginable for those of us who have not done this training and have not arrived to this stage. So today we're going to talk about a little bit of this aspect of the mind, which may be a little bit really or something like that. But anyway, so we're just giving the information and we can discuss. So now let's start with paying respect to the teacher, to the Buddha, and then we will start.
Okay, welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be together exploring the Dhamma. Okay, so let's go together with appreciation to the teacher of all our teachers and the Buddha himself. We recite together. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Homage to the sublime, the victorious, and the totally self-enlightened one. Iti piso bhagava araham sama sambuddho vichacharana sampano sugato bhagavu anutaro purisa dhamma sarati satta deva manusanam buddho bhagavati. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about direct knowledge, and sometimes also called supernormal power. And also we're going to look at cessation, the mental process. Also, Fernando asked about these two mental processes last time. So today we're going to look at these two special mental processes. Before we start with that, we will go a little bit back to content of the previous class. Last time we have been talking about that whatever chitta, you remember every kind of mind always associate with some kind of mental feeling. So it can associate with domanassa, which surely is dosa chitta, with unpleasant mental feeling, or it can be associated with neutral feeling, upekkha, or it can be associated with somanassa, which is pleasant mental feeling. So now, last time we talked about that if 1 unit of chitta is associated with domanassa, then it will be very difficult for it to associate. I mean, the next chitta will be very difficult for it to be somanassa, to jump because they are so different. They are so different. So it is not possible for somanassa chitta to follow a domanassa chitta.
Happiness, mental happiness and aversion cannot immediately pleasantness cannot immediately change. It must go through a intermediate phase, which will be the equanimity of the mind, as the example was given last 2 weeks, I think.
Yes.
We were saying that we have water in 3 different states: ice, liquid, and vapor. And it cannot directly jump from ice to vapor. It definitely, even if it does it very quickly, it will definitely cross the stage of liquid before reaching the vapor stage. The same can be said of the mind when it is changing in our day-to-day way of being. It cannot directly change from anger to pleasantness, or from pleasantness to anger. It should go to an intermediate state of temporary equanimity.
Yes, now as we all know that we are looking at the mind microscopically, so it is really fast. You said, okay, yes, of course, yes, I can get angry and become happy, or I can be happy and get angry immediately. Yes, but according to our experience, when we are happy and then with pleasant mental feeling and we get angry immediately, it seems possible, but in the mind, billions of cheetahs have already arisen and passed away. So here we're talking about only 2 cheetahs, one after the other. So of course, surely after some kind of mental processes, that yes, we do get pleasant mental feeling and we change to unpleasant or like this, but exactly one cheetah after another, they cannot stay together. So this is what we are talking about. So if you haven't attend the last few sharings, then we'll post the videos very soon, so then you can get the information there. So I'm now repeating this because there was a question. So okay, so now let's go a little bit ahead. Now we talked about the mental process when we are looking at when the mind is taking a very agreeable object in the 5 sense door processes, then all the time the is it okay? Yes. Then if a person he is born with the somanasa bhavanga, like his rebirth consciousness is associated with a pleasant feeling, then after the person that he gets domanasa in the javana stage, then
in the active side of the mind, when the person gets angry,
then after this javana that is associated with unpleasant mental feeling, then the bhavanga, which is his rebirth consciousness that is associated, not rebirth consciousness, in this case life continuum, but that comes as the same type as the rebirth consciousness, that is associated with mental pleasant feeling, that they cannot immediately goes to bhavanga. So in this case, I guess bhavanga, agantuka bhavanga will arise in this case. So this was the content that we looked at last time, and in this case, this agantuka bhavanga is actually upeka santirana here in this case, because it's a pleasant object, so it is a kusala vipaka. So it is a wholesome resultant consciousness, investigating consciousness associated with neutral feeling. So it is like a bridge between the unpleasant mental feeling and a pleasant mental feeling. So it happens as a bridge so that it can cross. So last time we have actually explained about this, so we're not going to repeat too much. But the question was these.
Who made the question? Alex?
Cass and Alex. So
Cass, are you there? Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. So this is regarding your question. We checked with Seado in Macau. So here it comes.
So last time we said that this gas bhavanga, which is actually upeka santirana, what kind of object does this cheetah takes? Because it does not take the same object as bhavanga, obviously, and it does not take the same object also as javana. So what this cheetah, the object that it takes, is actually an object that the mind is very familiar with. So in this case, it will be always a past karma object. Karma object meaning any of the 5 senses object. It can be a visual object, or sound, or smell, taste, and or anything that the mind can take, but it must be in the past, because the present object these javanas are taking, no? So he's not taking, this Chitta is not taking a present object, it's taking a past object. And so Ka's question was, can we give some example of what kind of object, what kind of familiar object can this Agantuka Bhavanga take? So we have asked Sayadaw, and Sayadaw said, it really can be anything that the mind is familiar with, that is always exposed to, or or this kind of thing always arises in his mind or her mind. So Bante last time was saying that it could be something that we have much desire for, or it can be an object of loba. Also, it is very possible. So if a person really likes an ice cream, chocolate ice cream, it would be possible that this also is so random that it can take a chocolate ice cream. Or it is also possible that it might be so random, like a tree that is in front of his house that he always see, or it can be even the image of his room or her room that he is very familiar with. And it can even be the sound or the voice of his mother or anything. So it's really any random object that the mind is very familiar with.
Something that I associate, and this is just a personal point of view, since Bhavanga is related to kind of the mind going onto neutral, we kind of say that the kind of objects that our dreams take, which is kind of random, although when our minds are dreaming, they are not really unconscious, they are really quite active. Mm-hmm. Like that kind of sense of taking objects, we have experienced it directly many times each time we dream. Apparently the mind just takes random objects, bring them together. Some of them are very close to our previous experience. For example, the things that happen just the day before we sleep, or just before sleeping, whatever it takes those kinds of objects and takes some other random objects towards the mind might feel attracted, and then it just takes something, and in this case the mind will just remember that this very flickering and fast mental moment is just for the mind to readapt to the happiness that is about to experience. If it was coming out of anger, if the mind was angry, it would just use this like a little stick or a cane to hold for a little while and then change to its normal way of being, which will be the Bhavanga, will be staying for some time. So kind of to make a closer, more down-to-earth image, it will be close to the kind of objects that our mind chooses, or somehow to say choose, when we are dreaming. So it will be aleatory kind of object that the mind will take.
Yes, I think that's quite interesting and acceptable.
Thank you, Sarah.
No, I mean, but I mean, it is. I think it is possible, but the only thing is that when we dream, we know that we are dreaming, but here, we don't know. Because what we only know is during the, let's say here, Ganda, the smelling consciousness, then we need a lot of things in order for us to know the object. No, remember the 4 kinds of processes that we need to pass through. Yeah. And here, with Bhavanga, as we know, that Bhavanga always happens in our mind. Between every kind of processes, it happens in the mind, but we don't know what kind of object it takes actually. It takes Kama Nimitta, Gati Nimitta, which is related to the past life, no? Remember? So those objects, we don't know what it is because we are not the mind. These are passive mind. Though every mind have an object. So, but we do not know what object these ones are actually. And this Agantuka Bhavanga also in this case, it's only one mind. Just this arise and pass away in a billionth second. So we also actually don't know. But this is just a detail that the Buddha explained. So much detail that he explained everything about every mind. So this is just a small detail that what kind of object it can take. But we actually don't know. I mean, in experience, we cannot know.
It cannot be known because it's already going towards neutral mode of the mind, the kind of unknown reaches of the mind. Just as a reminder, let's remember that the mind consciousness, in order to arise, it must have an object. Without an object, consciousness, there is no mind. And actually, the fact that we have contact with the 6 kinds of objects, the 6 senses, the sights, the sounds, smells, taste, tangible objects, and thoughts, that is the very cause for the different kind of consciousness to arise. It is essential for consciousness to arise to have an object. Without an object, consciousness cannot be present, and the object is precisely the very thing one of the conditions that makes consciousness arise. So it is a fact that the mind must be chewing something. The mind cannot be idle, doing nothing. As long as we are alive and our mental process is moving, the mind will be chewing some kind of object, be it present, be it past, be it imagining the future, or just the object that it is contained in our mental continuum, life continuum, when the mind is at rest or without having movement. Okay? How are we going until here? Has it solved the question? How does everybody is receiving this exploration? How are we? Can open the mics?
For me, thank you.
Okay, let's continue with the content of today. You will be a little bit amazed. We have spoken about this before, but still the nature of the mind, once it is really, really developed, it is really amazing, the capabilities that we all have. As a reminder, what we are about to see, if we train our minds, we can do what we are going to explore right now. Our minds can do all this kind of... How you say, which word you say? Extraordinary ways that our mind can behave and control the mind itself, listening to someone else's mind that you will see, and even changing the way matter behaves. Okay, so let's start.
Okay, so let's continue. So this was about last week's content. Then now we are going to see another section which is called Abhiññā. And Abhiññā is actually translated a more appropriate translation would be direct knowledge, which is what it is. It is a kind of knowledge that a person knows about something, because sometimes you will find some English translations that translate it as like supernormal power, or these kinds of words, which actually also it is quite super normal. It's not so normal, but it does sounds a little bit like
esoteric
or something, but
magical, but no, it's just the capability of the mind once it's really developed.
So therefore, direct knowledge is the actually more appropriate translation. So why is it and what is it? And so we are going to look at it now. So
sorry, Shana. Abhi might come from great or higher, and Ñā, it might be coming from Paññā, from the same Ñā, the knowing something, but in a great sense. We can check the etymology of it, but I think we
need to check. We need to check, and then we will come back to see.
Yeah, definitely will come from knowledge, some kind of wisdom.
Yes, it is associated.
Abhi might come from the same as Abhidhamma might be. We will check. Okay.
Okay, so this kind of Abhiññā direct knowledge is actually developed through practice of concentration. So through samatha meditation. So now we will look a little bit more what actually means by Abhiññā. In ultimate reality, what is it? So direct knowledge is actually Paññā Cetasika, which is the wisdom mental factor associated with the 5th Rupavachara jhana, which is the 5th fine material jhana. The Paññā Cetasika that is associated with the 5th Rupavachara jhana, kusala. If a person is not an arahant, so it will kusala chitta, and if a person is arahant, so it will be kriya chitta, no? Like, yes?
It will call mental absorption. about jhana. So when the mind is really, really concentrated, yes.
Yes. So it's wholesome for a person who is not a totally enlightened being, or it will be functional for a person who is totally enlightened. So actually, what is Abhiññā, as we can see here, is nothing but panya. It's a kind of wisdom that is being developed through samatha meditation.
Some kind of understanding that the mind can directly experience and know once the mind is so purified, so stable, so sharp. Any kind of mind like the ones we carry, if developed to such extent, can start knowing that those things as a fact of nature.
Okay, so there are 7 types of Abhiññā, 7 types of direct knowledges. And so we are going to look at them one by one. Then what is it possible for a mind when it is very concentrated? But we have to know that this is only possible when a person has attained all the Rupavachara jhana, which is all the 5 material jhanas, the 5 first, second, third, fourth, and fifth Rupavachara jhana, and the 4 Arupa jhana. So they must have all the 8 Samapajana, I think it's called. So they must have all the jhanas before it is possible that they attain this kind of knowledge. Some people, if they have a very sharp mind, then when they attain the 5th Rupavachara jhana, or when they attain Magga-phala, which is enlightenment, then this wisdom comes together because they have this ability. Their wisdom is so strong. So they sometimes it can come together with enlightenment or with the full 5th Rupavachara jhana, but most of the time people have to especially develop them after they attain all the jhanas. Then they have to do some more practice if they want to attain this kind of knowledge.
I wish to give an example that is more worldly to continue making these experiences daily. For example, when we were young and someone would come to us, that person, let's say, cannot express their feelings directly. They say something different, but they're actually feeling something different from what they're saying. Somehow, like when you ask someone, how do you feel? And the person says, fine, like everything is fine. Yes, it's easy to say the words. So let's say at the beginning when we were a child, less experienced, we will just maybe listen the words of the person telling us that. But as we have more experience dealing with many relations in our life, much more experience living, there might come a time when there is some kind of empathy and some kind of maturity of mind that we may see someone, and then that person might say, when we ask them, how do you feel? And they say, just fine. We might know that there is much more emotionally happening inside that person. I'm just trying to bring this to a very worldly terms. I would say that in a similar way, when our mind is developed and our awareness is very strong and the wisdom is very strong, it can recognize more things that are actually happening. The mind is not inventing anything. The only thing that the mind is so sharp that it starts perceiving beyond the appearances, and you will see the kind of behavior that the mind can have access, this kind of knowledge that the mind can have access once it is really refined. Yes.
Okay, so let's see what kind of direct knowledge are there. There's 7 types. The first type is called Devachaku, literally translated as divine eye. Is actually actually it is the knowledge that enable ones to see subtle or coarse things far or near, and also of other planes. But it is with the mind. The mind can see something that is far away, or it is near, or it can know what is happening in other places. For example, if a person that has this all the jhanas and he has Abhiññā, then after he practices, then he will see, okay, now I will see what is happening in Mexico, in Los Guayabos. So in his mind, he can see exactly as how it is there. Like the real situation there, he can see.
But it appears to the mind as a visual experience, and also many of the recounts of great teachers talking about different realms actually come from these experiences. It is a fact that when the mind is very, very, very calm, even in our normal reality, we might see more details of our surroundings because the mind is calm, is not distracted. Well, it goes as far as if the mind is so calm, it can start seeing beyond what the eye, in kind of the mental experience, visual mental experience, it starts seeing and perceiving visually beyond their surroundings and can even have glimpses of different realms, be it down the four lower realms, be it from the devas or the above, and in terms of space in this same planet. Apparently, the teacher says that the mind has that ability of seeing beyond the light and physical limitations.
Okay, so the next one is called Deva Sota, divine ear, which is quite similar to the eye, but now this one is for sound, so he can hear anything that is far or near, here or there, so he can the person can listen to those sounds that is really actually happening at the moment. So this is another one. Then let's see. Then another one is called Idivida, which is various supernormal power. That something we are quite familiar with. We have heard about, such as the power of creating forms, flying through the air, creating different forms. So let's say the person can duplicate himself, like make some copies, or he can fly through the air, or he can walk on the water, or diving into the earth, or pass through the wall, all these kind of amazing things that is possible when the mind is extremely concentrated and with this kind of wisdom.
Yeah, when some of we know we are very familiar with Jesus' ability of walking on water. When the teachers are faced with this, they just assume it as a normal possibility, a normal human possibility.
Mm-hmm.
So that may show, if it was so that Jesus could walk, it is very likely that his mental power was very, very, very refined.
Mm-hmm.
So he could actually start doing those things. And all some of the miracles that are attributed to Jesus' life, as far as we can know, for example, changing one liquid onto another, or duplicating fish or bread, and even healing. Once the teachers are questioned about it, they just turn to say, well, actually it's a human possibility, and actually you can do it. If any of us develop the jhanas, which is the meditative absorptions, the different kinds, starting with the first one, as Charana just mentioned, it should be once the person has mastered all of them. These kind of magical occurrences only happen in the last of the development of mind. So it is something natural. Apparently, we have the ability, and more mystery to the universe and human capability.
Yes, somebody wants to say something?
Someone, go ahead. Guillermo, were you some question or something?
Adelante.
Okay.
Adelante, no.
Okay.
No, I don't have any question at the moment.
Okay, yeah, because
we heard the mic now on. Yeah. Someone who has a comment, how is the information arriving until now? How are we? Please turn on your microphone, and then if you have something, let's touch base a little bit before moving on.
Thank you. This is very interesting. I just finished reading about Abhiññā.
Yes, precisely.
Yes, and she had those abilities.
Yes, precisely. This is we have spoke about her before, and she was a housewife, and then she got the husband died, and then she was already with a keen love for inner development and wisdom. And it all seems, and there is many recounts from other people, that she was very skillful in all of these kind of mental abilities. She could, just as a kind of a joke, because she was kind of a light spirit lady, she could arrive with her teacher through the wall, or there is a recount in the book of her biography, that she felt one time a little bit lonely or even fearful in the street, and she duplicated herself. So from the external appearance, people could see that there were a few people walking. There are also some recounts about that in some scriptures, about one monk, famous monk, that he was duplicating himself in the monastery. So there were actually many monks cleaning the monastery and such. So yes, apparently this teacher, Abhiññā, you can search for her online, and there is a wonderful book made by his students, some of them which are one of the most renowned meditation masters now in the United States, Jack Cornfield, Joseph Goldstein, and Sharon Salzberg. You can find this book. We recommend this. It's really amazing. And one thing to note is that her teacher was very careful about it and knew that she had enough humility to be able to handle this kind of mental powers. So he was confident that her ego was not going to overtake them. And that is one of the warnings that even the Buddha gave, by saying that even a person masters these mental powers, we should always remember that this will not liberate us from samsara. It is much more powerful to understand anicca, dukkha, and anatta, to practice vipassana. It has much more powerful, because these abhiññās, even we can walk on water or something, it can be even dangerous, because the Buddha even forbid some of the monks to do it, because it could cause, imagine in the world as we are, that so easily we get agitated by anything, to have such a ability in this present moment could create a lot of superstition, etc., or if it is misused, could create a lot of problems. So reminder, this is not the thing that will liberate us from suffering. It is much more powerful, the direct understanding of the nature of reality, so we can get enlightened. This will not get us enlightened.
Okay, so let's continue. And so this is another type of power which is possible. And for Paula, that you have read about Abhiññā, today you're going to see more in details how she does that. And also for those who have been to Guayabos, then you will have seen the photo of one lady in the altar, and the lady with glasses, with the small girl, and that is Abhiññā. Okay, so let's go ahead and see some other powers or some other yes.
Marifer raised the hand. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Marifer, you raise a hand. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to know what's the name of the book.
The Life and Legacy of a Buddhist Master. It's called Abhiññā, The Life and Legacy of a Buddhist Master.
Yeah. It's a wonderful book. All fully recommended. Light read and amazing, really, all what she did. And apparently there are rumors that she reached some degree of mental development in terms of enlightenment.
Thank you so much.
We had the opportunity to meet her niece, no?
Mm-hmm.
So we were having a retreat in China, and her niece was there. So Charana had opportunity to speak about a lot of her life and all this. So later we can talk about it. Before we move to the next kind of mental power or direct knowledge, it was mentioned that people can fly or levitate. Yes, actually that is possible. It's kind of been forever in the mysteries of meditative masters that people can levitate. And another way to see it in personal experience is that when our mind is stable and happy, we actually literally feel lighter the body. Once we get angry, depressed, or anxious, literally, directly, we can experience the physicality as much more heavy. Well, imagine if our mind is so refined, apparently, when the mind is in such state, matter starts behaving differently, and we can actually feel lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter until we start moving. And there are some sayings in Burma. It's kind of a part of the tradition, society, secrets around, that they have seen monks walking on water is not something uncommon. Actually, we met one that it is said that he used to walk in water, cross the river by walking. And there are sayings of people seeing red ropes moving on the sky. So we have never seen it directly, but definitely when we go to Burma, people truly have it in their social fabric. All these stories. Okay.
Okay, so let's go to another one. And another one is also very interesting. It's called Parachita Vijanana or Cheto Pariyanyana, the ability to read the minds of others. So this is the power of penetrating the mind of others to discern their thoughts. So it's like when the person, when he is in Abhiññā, with this direct knowledge, then he can look and he knows what the other person is thinking about. Later on, we are going to see all the mental processes of all this or how this is happening. So this is not that it is always like if a person has this Abhiññā, have this power, direct knowledge, then it does not mean that he always have to use it. So it's not that he is all the time 24 hours knowing the thought of the others, and I think he may get crazy. So so it's only when he wish to use it or when he wish to know, then he will use this ability. Otherwise, he doesn't. It's not all the time. So it's not like the person with divine eye that is not divine eye. So it's not that he's always seeing different kinds of things far or near, but only if he wish to. Later on, we'll see all the mental process. And only when he wish to, then he will see. Otherwise, it's just normal.
It's a resolution. It's a tool that the masters can use. And to put it again into earthly examples, we can relate, it's not the same, but we can relate this kind of mental power to a very, very, very heightened sense of empathy. We can see someone, even right now, we can see someone and kind of infer what that person is feeling or what that person, hence, is thinking about, isn't it? We can recognize with a person with one very small facial expression that there might be some sadness or some happiness or something. So we can relate onto that. It is possible. I just want to make it worldly. It is possible that we already do it, and empathy can consciously develop. Empathy is a muscle. So just imagine that to a very, very heightened and refined, where actually the master is not just inferring or being empathetic with the person, but it is actually listening what the person is. I don't know if it is listening or just knowing it in the mind. It is knowing the thoughts of the other. And actually there are teachers who use this tool consciously to teach others. There is a teacher who is called Lumpur Promot in northern Thailand. We have told you already about our experience being with him, and he actually uses this power. It is breathtaking, unbelievable what he does. We were part of it, and he does check into he asks the people to practice awareness, and he focuses his mind on the person that is practicing. He starts perceiving the mental process of the person and then gives instruction on what that person can improve to practice meditation more properly. You can still visit him. Apparently this activity, this kind of teaching is very tiring, so he just gives interviews 1 or 2 times a week, and then he needs to rest for the rest of the time. Apparently it's very demanding to do that practice, but he uses it to teach. Lumpur Promot. P-R-O-M... P-R-A... Promot. M-O-T-E. We can check. He's in northern Thailand, and he uses this too. Okay. Let me check. You go ahead. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Just now that we are.
Yeah. This is him. Lumpur Promot.
Okay.
And his teaching style is very, very similar to Sayadutta. Although Sayadutta just use direct input from the meditators to know what's happening on their mind. And so to say, he also have a very heightened sense of empathy to know, based on his experience and seeing so many meditators around the world, he has a very heightened sense of knowing what the mind is doing while it is practicing.
Yes.
Okay.
So we appreciate Bhante. He always use some examples more close to our daily experience, so we can relate to how it could be, or so we can imagine. Just one point here is that if we use the word empathy or like that, we are always just imagining. We're never sure that what the other person is really thinking, or is it really true what he is feeling. But with this direct knowledge, with such concentration of the mind, the person who has this ability, he really knows for sure exactly what the person is thinking and feeling. So it's not guessing or imagining or feeling. So it's a really direct knowledge.
That would be very interesting to do. No, imagine. Okay.
Okay, so let's go to another ability. Another direct knowledge is called Hube Niwasanusati. And this is the ability to remember former existence. This is the existence of one's own existence, not the power to remember one's former lives and the former worlds in which one has lived. So also this since it is a direct knowledge, so some person, they might have more deeper wisdom than the other. So for example, the Buddha himself, he could remember all his life, millions of lives past, how it was. So some of his disciples can remember maybe 1,000 lives, until 1,000, or some maybe can remember 500, some maybe can remember 200, or some maybe can remember 3 former lives or something. So depending on how deep this wisdom is, so how many lives, mental abilities, or how far one can go. So this is another kind of direct knowledge which is possible.
This is one of the supernormal powers, mental powers, that is quite useful in terms of spiritual development. Why? Because right now, if the masters talk about us about previous life, rebirth, samsara cycle, and all that, we just need to use faith, sadha. We just have to kind of believe, because we have not experienced it directly. So one of the most useful powers, mental powers, will be this one, because we can clearly see that this is not the first time we have been walking in this planet, maybe having a different life. The person can perceive clearly what was the way that he or she died previously, and how that can be a very big incentive for us to take the samsaric cycle and the cycle of suffering as a fact, for true, and start doing something to ease that cycle of birth, death, and suffering that it is contained. Without neglecting the moments when the mind is peaceful and we experience happiness, love, and all that, but we are still caught onto the net of samsara, life and rebirth and death, etc. So this is one of the most useful powers to get more serious about where we are in cosmic terms.
Okay, so let's go to another knowledge.
Yep. And just briefly, remember that when a mind is stable, when our mind is agitated, and if we lose the keys of the car, the more agitated we are, the more difficult it will be to remember where we left them. In the same way, when the mind is peaceful and clear, it will definitely have a more possibility to remember where we left something. So in the same way, imagine in a very heightened degree of peacefulness and stability, the person cannot just remember where he left the keys, but what happened yesterday, previous week, previous month, previous years, until he was on the womb. And suddenly, if his concentration focused on that moment, from the moment the consciousness arose in this, apparently all this record is on the mental continuum, and suddenly that person just remember the last thought or the last moment before he or she died in previous life and can continue going back. All this is not based in magic, just in a very heightened mental stability. Yeah.
Okay, the next one is called Yatakamupaganjnana, the knowledge of rebirth according to one's action. So this is actually the ability of seeing beings in all the 31 planes of existence and knowing their respective karmas which have given rise to their rebirth. So this is the understanding of actually how cause and effect, how karma works. So if the person, he knows like this person is born into the Deva realm, into the deity world, because he has done so much generosity, he has a very good morality throughout his life, and so all these things which leads him to this kind of life. So they know what kind of actions that leads them to what kind of life. So this is also another ability that is possible.
Mental ability.
Then another one is called Anagatamsa Jnana, the knowledge of the future, the power of non-future existence and future worlds. So this is related to what Bhante just said. Then he said, according to what happened, then one can know what happened in the past just by remembering, knowing. So in the same way, one, according to the present circumstances, then one can know if the things go on this way, and this is what is going to happen. So it's just like rewind or fast forward. So they can know that what is going to happen. So one example is, for example, when the Buddha, before he became the Buddha, then he was a bodhisattva, and 4 asankhya's and 100,000 kappas, eons and eons, great eons before. And when he got when he met another Buddha in that time, then the Buddha saw him, and with this knowledge, and then he knows that, oh, this person is going to become a future Buddha. Then he knows for sure, because he has this kind of knowledge. He knows what's going to happen in future times. So therefore, he announced to Sumedha at that time that he
the
is
Buddha to be,
which is like former lives of our Buddha Gautama. Then he said that in lifetime, then you will be born as a prince called Gautama, and in that life you are going to become the Buddha. So this is the knowledge that the Buddha used at that time. Okay, so here is the 7 types of direct knowledge, which is possible when the mind is very, very concentrated, and when the person attained all the 8 absorption of
meditative
absorption, all the 8 jhanas. And if he further develops his mind, then he can attain this kind of knowledge, direct knowledge. So it is knowing, seeing different worlds and far or near, listening to different sounds from different far or near. Then all kinds of powers like duplicating, making forms, walking on water, and knowing person's mind, knowing former existence, and knowing what kind of karma, what kind of actions leads to what kind of rebirths, and knowing what's the future existence and future worlds.
So, gambare with the jhanas, my dear family. If you wish to have any of this kind of mental power, it is actually possible. We just need to practice meditation, samatha meditation, one object meditation, and the kasinas. We have said before, the different kind of disc. If anyone has some curiosity how it is done, we have spoken before, but it is actually the technique to reach to it is not difficult. Just the persistency to keep the mind onto one object until the image is reflected on the mind, and then the jhana starts happening. And as a reminder, the meditator experiences a very heightened degree of peace and happiness, because at that time, one of the gifts of the jhanas is that all the mental negativity is suppressed temporarily. Remember, jhanas do not uproot the negativity of the mind. That can only be done by vipassana. Understanding reality as it is, wisdom can get us enlightened, but that is very pleasant. and can have all these kind of mental abilities, which will be very, very useful. If a mind can do all these things, it will have a much more keen interest and ability to understand reality as it is. So definitely, it's not the way for liberation, but it will be very, very useful to give us a power of spiritual urgency. If we know previous lives, if we know what is happening, we can apply ourselves to spiritual endeavor and activity instead of worldly sensual pleasure seeking activities as society is normally accustomed.
So of course, this kind of knowledge or this kind of powers in itself, they are good. There is nothing wrong about them. But the Buddha does advise or encourage that all these things, if we are to develop this kind of abilities, it is for the purpose of supporting vipassana or supporting the final liberation. Because even having jhanas or having this mental ability, that does not mean that a person has no mental defilement. So mental defilements are still strong, and even with this power, then it can be worse, because then he can do worse things. So, for example, the Buddha's cousin, Devadatta, if you have read some of the Buddha's life story, that you might know that Devadatta, he is very envious about the Buddha, and he always tried to do something bad to the Buddha. And he also has very high concentration. He has jhana powers, and he has these kinds of powers as well. But even like that, then he still doing unwholesome things, because kilesas are still there. It's not eradicated. So this is not the final goal, and the Buddha does not encourage one to develop these kind of powers for the purpose of the power, but just only for support for liberation, for support to uproot all kinds of mental defilements, which is our final goal, no?
Wisdom.
Okay, so those are the 7 types of abhiññās, and let's continue a little bit.
Do you want to touch base a little bit or continue?
Okay, we can ask everybody.
So, until now, before we continue with the mental process, my dear family, someone who has a comment, question, how are we? Go ahead. Turn on your mic or raise a hand, and we explore.
Yes, this is Guillermo.
Yes, Guillermo. Welcome.
Is it possible to have some of these abilities without doing concentration?
No.
You can have it. No.
Not
you
possible.
can have them just by being virtuous in your infancy.
No, the mind can be very stable, and it might reach these states easier if the person is, for example, the morality is very developed, but ultimately it will have to come through mental stability. The person needs to reach to these mental jhanas, to these mental absorptions, so the mind can start having this. It's not a given, and it is, as Charana mentioned before, it is a, how you say, a decision, a tool that the person consciously use in order to have these mental abilities.
Now we are going to look at the mental process. Like if a person want to apply or want to use this kind of ability, then what kind of mental process he has to go through. So by the time then you will see, he must first enter jhana, then he must make a resolution, then he must. So it's not like it can accidentally happen. So he must. He must do the concentration practice.
What I was talking about is the proneness, the ability, the facility to do so. It might be based on previous development, and even a child can have that mental stability developed previously. So when he does this,
easier.
It will reach easier. But no, definitely it should come through it. Yeah.
Yeah. So if a person in his previous life,
thank you very much.
Has already he used to already practice this kind of concentration meditation, so he is familiar with it, then it will be easier for him to get it.
But needs to do the same. Yeah.
One more question.
Yes, go ahead, Nancy.
So these kids that can remember past lives, that means that they have already the ability, or is that different thing?
No, it's a different thing.
Different thing.
Yes. We have also asked these questions to our teachers, like why some children they remember their past life, and so some our teacher says that sometimes it's because of a strong tendency or strong attachment or strong wish of that person in his previous life that he wished to do so, and he remembered. So the mind have some kind of abilities, but those things that they remember is not. I don't think
conscious one.
It's not so clear or like this kind of ability exactly.
It is. It is not like the child sits down. Okay, let me remember the previous life. So it happens naturally as the child is still fresh. This is personal way, and it is not spoken in this way, in the same way with the teachers, but it is kind of before we get reset or identify with the new one we became. As the children comes, it is all the accounts of previous life. It is much more common when you check even scientific studies. It is much more common among small children because somehow, this is my interpretation, they are not yet identified with the new person they are now, like the new house, the new family, the new social and economic status. The more we get identified and attached with this one, I will say that the more we forget what was coming from the previous experiences. But no, it will not be the same. That is kind of aleatory, depending from case to case, and the children just do it naturally. They just start talking. It is proven even scientifically that children do remember different experiences and even give accounts of places, family members, how they died, and all that. So it is different. Later on, it is also proven that many of those things are forget as long as the child gets more identified with the new one they are now dealing with. So it is different.
Yeah, so it's a different quality of the mind, let's say, that sometimes we remember something and like that, but that is not the power of direct knowledge.
Yes. Someone else? Question? Commentary?
Yes, so this is Paula.
Yes,
so
Paula.
I imagine people who have psychic abilities like, say, Nostradamus. It's totally different kind of thing.
Yes, we cannot judge because we don't have enough information about his mental process. But yes, apparently it would be something different. If he was not practicing meditation and jhanas, it would definitely be, if it was, a different kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, somebody else?
Okay, yes. So my question is that is the process similar to with the Dalai Lama, when they say that it's maybe a little kid and he even recognizes his stuff from the previous life? Are you familiar with that? Or not?
I think it will be similar to what we were saying about little children remembering previous life. Not sure about jhana, that the children the children was practicing the jhana, so it will be closer. That's why it is a rush for the monks to find the boy as soon as possible, because they know that the more they grow, the more they forget. So that's why once the Dalai Lama, he even gives warning, not warning, but signs where he is about to born, and give them some hints so the monks can quickly find him. And then the boy will check. If you want to know more details, I mean, it's a movie, but in the movie that is called Kundun, which is, it describes the life of the Dalai Lama and how he was found and all this. It's quite entertaining. It's well done. It's called Kundun, Kundun, Kundun. Very nice, and you can see some details.
And also, it does not come directly from last life. Then, I mean, the ability, if a person used to practice the jhana or all these things in last life, and if he was successful, then according to karma, he must be reborn in the Brahma realm. So he will not be reborn as a human being.
Yes.
If he was died still with jhana,
directly.
So he was born as a Brahman. So he won't be a human being in the immediately past life, no. So that does not bring this ability to this life. So if a person was a Brahman last life and he was reborn to a human world, Actually, he does not born direct to a human. He must pass through another Brahmins, or he will go to Deva, and then he will later on become a human again. So it will be easier for these persons to practice later on, but for children, it's not that common.
Not that common. Something I take out of this is that as we are listening, it is possible for a human mind to remember previous life. We might have had that kind of thoughts when we were very small, but maybe no one recorded, no one noticed, or the parents just listen to us and says like, what is this kid talking about? And the thing I'm taking is that it is possible, even without the Abhiññās, it is possible for a human mind to have contact with previous experience, because this process, mental process, is not new. It came already. Even we can say that our likings, nuestros gustos, our likings already are kind of a remembrance and tendency from previous lives. We like something in difference to our brothers and sisters, same house, same conditions. We have some tendency towards something. That potentiality is already recorded on our mind, and that's why we are studying and contemplating these things, and some other people do something different. So it is kind of, I just want to hone it down and bring it to the earth and say, yes, for a human mind, it is possible, because it is previous activity, it's karma, it's actions that the mind took previously that colors our present experience. And we can go further by doing consciously through mental cultivation and stability. Okay. So,
yes, thank you.
Thank you, Cass.
Alex,
we continue.
Just one more question.
Yes, Alex.
Similar to Cass. What would be the case with shamans or maracames or taitas that develop this sort of power to heal and to kind of foresight things in a very different way than we usually do? It's not like among the regular mental kind of a state of a normal person, I would say.
I was, Alex, in that world for 8 years when I was practicing with Uncle Luciano. Actually, I took a trip with him, and he was teaching some of the things about shamanic healing and things. I'm sure that it is different methodology, and it is a personal comment, I'm not very sure how accurate it can be. And definitely, if it is according to the mental development to reach it, if it happens, it will be something different than what we're talking about the jhanas, because this is very clearly unavoidably present in the mind of the one who is using that tool. I cannot say more, but also to include that there are many loose things in terms of, because I was, with all respect I say it, in the world of shamanic, there is also a big tendency, and I was part of it, and I confess, of a big tendency to superstition and easily believing things that, of course, the universe is very deep and strange, deeper and stranger than what we can imagine. But to be honest, I experienced it firsthand. There is a great tendency to give meaning to animals or to other forces that are unseen. And in my case, it generated, it was detrimental and it was nourishing for some way, but detrimental in terms of the superstition that it was generated. This is what I can say. I don't know.
I witnessed certain things that unavoidable. I will say that they weren't superstition. I will say some others could actually be, but some are like really still for me a mystery at this point, how they do it.
Yes.
And I was just wondering if they could probably achieve some similar state to the development of the jhanas by the use of power medicine or medicinal plants and stuff like that.
As we have seen, the jhana has a mental it's a methodology. I think we can surely say that it won't be through the jhana. There might be something different, And I just to clarify, when I spoke about superstition, I was speaking definitely personally. I did got into a god of personally, and I take responsibility for it. I did got into a lot of superstition, way of thinking, and weird stuff. So I'm not assuming that everybody. I mean, there is a lot when you reach the some kind of circles. There is a lot, but definitely I'm speaking only personally. I did got into a lot of superstition.
Well, according to the Buddha's teaching, we cannot say about other people because we don't know what they practice.
No.
But according to the Buddha's teaching, to attain Abhiññā, it is only possible through samatha meditation for all this direct knowledge that we are talking about.
According to the degree of detail that we are dealing with, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, well, I don't know exactly what you meant by what kind of power or what can they do. I don't know, so it's very hard to say.
Yeah, well, it's not that important, but I just wanted to have an idea if it was possible. I don't want to deviate the class too much from this topic, but the answer is clarifying. Thank you.
Yes, according to the Buddha's teaching, it's only through mental development and not
conscious mental development.
Yes, conscious mental development through meditation, the samatha practice for this type of knowledge, and definitely not through any kind of medicine or plants or anything.
And there is also a danger in it. If we assume that the plant or the medicine is the one who gives us that, well, we have seen many. It's kind of a tricky. We must be careful. It's a tricky ground. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of blurry sometimes.
Yes, it is a little bit tricky. Yeah. Yes, Marifer, Fernando, or Lupita has a question. Go ahead, Fer. You raise the hand first.
My question is regarding the relation of the 4 Iddhipada with the development of mental powers. So these 4 Iddhipada should be focused on the advancement of the jhanas, or once the person is skillful with the jhanas, then he applies these 4 factors to develop the mental power? Or is it like in both? Like
you mean how to develop these powers?
Yeah, but because I have read that there are 4 factors that kind of guarantee successful practice. That are the 4 Iddhipadas: Chitta, Chanda, Virya, and Vimamsa. So this should be applied like when we're training, for example, to attain a jhana, to have in mind these factors in order to succeed in the jhanas. Or
actually, the jhanas contain them. If we see, for example, Chitta, the consciousness, Viriya, the effort, definitely jhana requires it. Vimamsa, which will be a kind of wisdom, it is also included onto them. I don't know what you want to add there.
Well, first of all, about the jhanas, the way of developing the jhanas and the way of developing the abhiññās, all these methods, it's mentioned in the Visuddhimagga. So if you want to know clearly about it, then we should read the Visuddhimagga. And we also have to check exactly, read again, because I don't want to give you any answer that I think it is like this. So we should check before we answer. And another thing is also that for the success of jhana is the practice of jhana. It's the mental the jhana factors. No, according to the first jhana, it is the 5 factors, and the second jhana, third jhana. So all this must be in balance, and accordingly, how to practice is clearly explained by the Buddha. And also, this kind of abhiññās, when a person developed 8 jhanas, and sometimes he needs to further develop to get this Abhiññā. But it does not mean that a person who practices the Abhiññā can get all these 7 types. Sometimes he can get 1, sometimes he get 2. And so it does not mean that a person that it comes in a set is not a set that he get all this power. So sometimes he has he can see further words, but he cannot listen. There are actually these stories in the lifetimes of the Buddha. Some people, maybe he can read the minds of the others, but he cannot see previous lives. Or so it's not like a full set.
It's not like
some person, depending on his mind, depending on his tendency, depending on his mind quality, that he might be possible to develop some kind of knowledge, and some is possible, some is not.
Even in the stories about the close disciples of the Buddha, some of them were good for different ones. I think Venerable Moggallana and all like this, they were very easily listening or seeing different worlds, etc., etc.
Yes.
It is not, apparently it's not something like even though we put it in worldly terms, it requires a deep concentration and work backing it up. And as you say, Fer, I think this wisdom and effort definitely just for normal development of jhana would be kind of some of the characteristics for it to arrive. I don't know if this answers your question.
If you can send us the passage or the quote or where you read about the relation between jhana and Iddhipada, then we can check, because otherwise that it will be difficult to say.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Yeah, but you make the points clear that these are important factors for jhana, and I think that is the answer I was looking.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Wanted to clarify. Yeah.
Yes.
If you want to know more, or if we can ask our teacher, but please send us the quote of what you read about the relations between Iddhipada and jhana.
Thank you, Fer.
Thank you.
Very happy, my dear family, to be together exploring such a wonderful topic, such a passionate topic. Okay, Marifer, you raise the hand. Go ahead, my dear.
Yes, thank you. I have 2 questions. One is, do you guys think this has got anything to do with the saying that we only access the 10% of our brain?
Yes, we can say it so very loosely, but yes.
Well, I would say
cannot ascribe it totally and say yes, that is right, but that is right.
You see, for humans, that actually it's very, very, very hard to answer this question. I think because most of the time we attribute the mind as the brain. But the Buddha never said the mind is the brain. So where is the mind? It's not necessarily located in the brain.
No, but she was referring to our possibility.
Yes, I know, but I mean, so that's why if this ability is in the brain or not, we don't know. So that's why whether we're using 10%, then we're not using the other percent of the brain. Whether it has to do with the brain, we don't know.
Also, Marifer, we cannot set up as a rule because even among humans, we have very different tendency, ability, and likings. So even a human that is fully functioning might decide to spend his conscious time wasting his mental ability, like just doing entertainment or social media, or just numbing the mind with more desires. So cannot say, yes, we all have the potentiality to reach very far. All of us have the potentiality to go as deep as that. And yes, we can say that in that sense, we will be using more of our ability or potentiality, but it will depend in many, many factors. Cannot put it as a rule generally, because some people might.
It
yes,
like
it is definitely, but some people might also born with different mental disability, etc., etc. So just accounting the whole spectrum. But yes, we can say that we have much more. We can safely say that we have much more potential than what society asks us for. Society actually, it is a little bit depressing. I don't know how to say. It's a little bit really, society asks from us very little. Often, society, it's much better if we don't think at all. We just move following a tendency or a fashion or something. So yes, definitely we have much more deeper reaches and abilities only if we set ourselves to develop it with the right methodology. And yes, we will be using much more spaces, a space of our inner potential. How wonderful it would be if we could all be there. Imagine the kind of society we will have, because definitely this kind of wisdom, ultimately, as far as we know, the people who reaches these heights generally has a very deep humility. Humility calls for care. Humility calls for love, compassion, and service. So definitely people who has reaches these heights are very beautiful human beings. So dangerous to put these powers onto selfish or egotistic hands. That would be very, very dangerous, like any power. Yes. Next question.
Thank you. And the other question is, what will you say is the best mix in meditating habits for beginners, like with Vipassana and Samatha? Like, how much time would you suggest someone like us to do every day?
Most of the time, it really depends on what you want, because Samatha meditation is good to calm down the mind, unless you want to develop jhana. If you want to develop jhana, definitely you have to practice a lot of Samatha only.
A lot.
If you want to practice, if you want to attain the jhana. So if your purpose is for Vipassana, which the Buddha and many master, even the Luang Por promote that he has this ability, all the jhanas, and he told people don't waste time on trying to develop jhana. Yes. He himself, he said so. He said practice Vipassana, because that's the more important thing. So it depends on what one's want. But of course, sometimes I would say that if the mind is stable and you can know what is happening, then better practice Vipassana to know and to see what is to gather information so that we can learn. But sometimes the mind is very agitated or is very not calm, let's say. So it's also good to practice a little bit of breathing or some samatha, so that the mind is calmer, and it helps to have more attention, no? And have more possibility to practice Vipassana. But actually, if it was Sayadaw U Tejaniya, he would say that if the mind is really agitated, he said, just know that it is agitated. He might say so. So it is also Vipassana, but it's okay. He also sometimes Sayadaw U Tejaniya also said practice maybe 10 minutes breathing. Then you observe. Then if you think that the mind is like it's really not working, then okay, then practice again 10 minutes and then go back and forth.
Yes, I would say to have a with food, to have a healthy meditative diet. So as a rule, we can set it up like you are going to meditate, you do some part of your meditation samatha, and then you change to vipassana. But above all is to know oneself. If the mind is agitated, first calm it down with samatha. If the samatha practice is agitating the mind more, then continue observing the reality, investigate. So we must know what tool we need to be used. We cannot set up a rule for everyone, because also we might say set up a rule right now that, as you say, maybe we are beginning or trying, but then as the mind develops, the mind itself will need some different things. There are some through the years, the mind asks for more samatha, for more vipassana, or a mixture of both. And the best way to understand oneself will be experimentation. What makes us feel more stable? What clarifies our understanding the most? Which will be what that will liberate us. Now, if we want to reach to the jhanas, then we practice samatha. And just to let you know, in Burma, there are monasteries solely dedicated for both. If you want to practice only jhanas, there are monasteries dedicated only onto achieving the jhanas. And there are also other monasteries who make a mix. And there are some other monasteries who only do vipassana. And we must find a balance between ourselves. Another thing about time, you mentioned time. Just to pass information directly from Sayadaw U Tejaniya, he most of the time do not recommend for us to use time while we meditate, because he has found out that one of the things that keeps meditators from meditating is the worry of the clock. Do I have enough time? 45 minutes has passed, 20 minutes has passed. So he said, do not count your meditation in time. Check the quality of your mind and understand what does your mind needs. Do you need calmness before you investigate? Or the investigation is going well, you better continue there. Did you lose sharpness of the mind? Then go to practice samatha. So it will be a moving, a flow, and experimentation will be the thing. But definitely having awareness full time, since we wake up until we go to sleep, and in a calm and relaxed, continuous manner. And if we have the space, go and practice samatha. Give it a time for it. If we can do only samatha and then continue with the vipassana in our daily life, or both, the menu is open, and only us will be able to choose the right tool for the right moment. Is it clear this way?
Okay, yes, perfectly. Thank you so much.
Careful with clock. I think to all of us, we put the clock and we open one eye. Is it still 30 minutes to go? So we are thinking about time. Seattle has find out that, and he says, no, don't use clock. Sit and let the mind do what it needs. But yes, in our busy scheduled daily life, we can set up some alarms if necessary, but just know that can be an extra agitation for the mind. Reminder, my dear family, not everybody can get jhanas. Remember, if we born with 2 roots, it's another fact. So we take it in account and continue trying our best. It is not a given that all the people will be able to reach the jhanas, depending if we born with 2 or 3 roots. So you remember, if we born with the panya root, definitely that person easily can get the jhana.
I don't know. Well, it's
possible. Maybe easily, depending, and even get enlightened. So just to give the full information, let's try our best. Love, awareness, and wisdom is above all these things, regardless of how many roots we have. So I think we can safely dedicate our time to awareness, mental stability in any form, and investigation of reality and wisdom. That will be, I will say, personally, I take it as a healthy meditative diet.
Okay, so anybody else before we take a 5-minute break?
Just a quick question.
Yes.
Samatha is the same as anapana, like breathing, awareness of breath?
Anapana is one type of samatha. So for samatha meditation, which is tranquility meditation, that you may call it, then there are 40 objects that one can observe. Anapana is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Samatha is a one-pointedness contemplation. So we choose one object, be it our breath in this case, as Charanam just mentioned, that there are 40 kinds described by the Buddha. We can choose a physical sensation, the rising and falling of our abdomen, or the temperature on our skin, and then we keep bringing the mind to one single object, and that is what makes exercise for the muscle of the mental stability, samadhi, and then it gives power to the mind. And then we have, on the other hand, the investigation, understanding of vipassana. So we can be mixing one or the other. Both are very good friends and support for one another.
Like other examples of other subjects for meditation for samatha could be metta, loving kindness, is one kind. Anapana, breathing, is one kind, and kara kasina is one kind. Like some people, they focus on white color or light or white color. So the white. The concept of white color, light, and so there are many kinds of subjects.
The sensation as we walk.
Yes, but not all of them can help one attain the highest jhanas. But for anapana, breathing itself, it can reach to the highest.
It can go to the.
Jhana
We can use anapana to go to the Abhiññā.
It's a good tool.
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay.
Now, so let's go ahead and see how this, when a person who has this ability and when he wants to apply this ability, what he needs to do and what kind of mental process then one need to go through. So now, if a person, he has already got the 8 jhana, and then he wants to practice he wants to use this Abhiññā ability, then first what he needs to do is that he has to first again go into the 5th Rupa jhana process as a basic process for this preliminary. This is the basic process for preliminary process. So what he needs to do is he has to meditate again with his object. If he used to use Anapana, then be it Anapana, or if he used to use other object, then he use other object. Then he practice again, and he must enter the 5th Rupa Jhana Samapati, so which is the process that is, as we have seen before, then Bhavanga, Manodwara Vajana, then the 4 kind of preparation, Parikama, Upachara, Anulama, Gotrabu, then jhana, so many jhanas, that is the jhana samapati process, the 5th rupa jhana he must enter. Then after this process, then he needs to come out of the jhana, and then a normal kamavachara mind or process will arise in his mind, and he needs to make a resolution. And in this mind or process, he must think that may I see the other world, or may I see something, no? So for the divine eye, in this case, just as an example. So after he make the resolution, again, he has to enter the 5th Rupa Jhana process. Again, he must enter the Samapati, the 5th Rupa Jhana. This is a basic process before the Abhiññā. So after this, then he has to now enter to the Abhiññā process, which is another mental process. This is actually also jhana process, but this time only Manodwara Vajana, Parikama Upachara, Anoluma, Gotrabu, and only one Abhiññā is going to happen. So Abhiññā is very powerful because only one time it arises, passes away, go back to Bhavanga stream, and after this this process, then with other mind door, usual mind door process, then he sees what he wants to see.
He already kind of open the door to the Abhiññā, to the ability, to opens the door, and then with the normal mental process, he's already seeing or listening or checking previous lives or understanding or knowing the thoughts of others.
Mm-hmm. So in this case, is interesting, although it is divine eye, but he's not seeing with his physical eye, he's seeing with the mind. So he has a mind door process where he sees what is happening. So this is the process that he must go through if he wants to use the Abhiññā ability. So therefore, we said that previously that it is necessary that the person consciously go through this process in order to use this ability. So it won't be so, it must be a practice. So it cannot be just know. It is not like that. Okay, so in brief, I put it all into one single image, so we know. So first he must enter the 5th Rupa Vajana Samapati, come out of it, make a resolution. May I perform this power? Then he again enter the 5th Rupa Jhana process, jhana. Then he enter the Abhiññā process. Then after that, then he can perform those abilities. Okay, so about Abhiññā, it's up to here, and we only have around 15 minutes. So we have only 15 minutes. So I don't think we have enough time to go to Nirodha Samapati, which is the attainment of cessation process.
No, better.
So we will better stop here. And if you have some questions, then we can discuss. Then otherwise, I think it's good to stop here for today. Then so next week we will look at the Nirodha Samapati, which is also another attainment process, a little bit special, which is when the mind stops for a little while. For more details, don't miss the next session.
Yes, my dear family, questions until now? Let's better not open another chapter. How are we until here? What are we taking home? Please feel free feel welcome, go ahead.
It is very interesting, all these abilities we could get.
Yes, amazing, no?
Yes, the mind is indeed very powerful.
Regarding the saying that we use a small percentage of our brain, I think it could be related that if we are more efficient, it's like using more of the cheetahs for a wholesome purpose. And maybe we normally use, we have a lot of babanga.
Yes.
And so we cannot apply every cheetah to a good use. And maybe when we are more skillful, it's like, it's just my thinking that maybe we use more efficiently those millions of cheetah per second.
Yes.
And that gives the impression that we have, that we're using more percentage of our brain.
Yes, but actually all of them are happening. The only thing is that we are turning them on a little bit more. But they are still happening, but they were kind of unconscious or in neutral.
Well, if it is in Bhavanga, it's still okay. But if we are using most of the time for Akusala, then it's worse.
Worst, which is the case, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, it's like we are normally we are kind of asleep, and then if we are more awake, then we are more efficient in using those mental units.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
Yes. Actually, what I think is that microscopically, if the worst thing actually, because if we know that we are kind of like not really doing good or not doing something, actually the mind is not only just not doing good, it's actually because Javana is always happening. So it is without attention, without wisdom. Most of the time, the minds will be either with moha, with lova, or with dosa. So actually, it is doing akusala. It's not that it is doing nothing. It is worse. So the thing of having attention or directing the mind, using more potential, as you said, is to apply wisdom to let's try to make as much as possible those javanas, make it kusala.
And definitely it makes sense, Fair, because we have seen with teachers that actually they sleep less, for example, sleep is the realm of Bhavanga, isn't it? Once we are deep sleep, the mind is just in neutral in Bhavanga. And I would say it makes sense to be more interested, more alert, and we will be using much more of this instead of going into the Bhavanga and not knowing something and just skipping reality, which that will happen, I believe, much more when we are drunk or drugged. When we break the fifth precept, I would say that more Bhavangas have more possibility, and as Charana says, more Akusalata, which that is the real danger. So I think it makes sense that the more we love wakefulness, the more we love understanding or have a wholesome wish to be cultivating wisdom, I would say naturally the mind will be more alert. And another kind of practice, which is the avoidance of tina mida, the sleepiness and heaviness of mind, which many of the practices are designed to combat. I would say it will be on the same line. The more we avoid sensual desire and sleepiness and laziness, torpor, and increased interest, I would say that the resources, the mental resources in terms of energy and mental moments will be much better used. And I dare to say that if we are interested onto doing this, we are already starting to change the percentages of the mind being idle, just doing nothing, or interested into doing something. Hopefully, taking it away from akusala. Yeah, it makes sense. Yes.
Thank you.
Someone else?
Hi.
What do we bring home? Yes, go ahead, Paula.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, is it fair to say that if say Deepama had these abilities while she was alive,
yes,
that when she passed away, when she died,
yes,
that these abilities stayed with her and she could actually still be present, even though physically she's not here?
No. Potentiality on her mind, whatever it follow, it will follow her because she have a liking and a possibility of reaching it. But not that she died and still, if he didn't get totally enlightened, she is in another life. It's not that we die and we are hanging somewhere else. It is another life, be it in any of the 31 realms that are around.
If she has already all these abilities, that means she attained the Arupa jhanas in this case, and she will be reborn into the non-material world if she is not totally. She died already.
If she died with the jhana.
If she died with the jhana. But well, I think so. If it's because that if a person, the teachers, they said that if a person practiced jhana and he attained jhana at the point in his life, but then he never practiced again, then this ability will also go away, just like any kind of ability. If we ride bicycle and we never practice, then we forget how to do it.
Need to
any kind of ability. So if when the person when the time when she or he dies, and if he has not practiced for a long time, then this ability is not there anymore. So when he is reborn, then he might not be reborn to those realms which are the result of those practice. So he might be, or she might be reborn as in the Deva realms or in the human world. It's possible. But if the ability is still intact in the moment when he or she passed away, then surely with this ability, if he's or she is not totally enlightened yet, then they will be reborn into the non-material world, which is.
And she continue there with that potentiality, liking, and ability. If she continue developing, as Sharana says, when we learn a piece on a musical instrument, and if we don't play it for long, we forget it. Even we knew it by heart perfectly, it happens the same with any kind of ability. Mm-hmm. How do you feel, Paula, until now? We took many things, starting with the notion of there is nothing lingering after we die. If that person hasn't been enlightened, it will continue in a different form or rebirth. How the information reaches.
If that person wasn't enlightened, he will continue into that same form.
No. He will reborn in another being. He will continue in the cycle of samsara, which will die and rebirth, die and reborn, die and reborn, die and reborn, until that person is totally enlightened. When that person gets enlightened, that's his or her last life. And then when she or he died, they go to Parinibbana. They don't go. They reach Parinibbana. There is no more conditions for a rebirth. That's why that consciousness finally rests. No more birth or death, old age or sickness. No more suffering.
Yeah. Also, if you are interested, in the previous videos, we have also talked about the different kinds of minds, the different realms, and also the dying processes and rebirth. And so if you're interested, then you can take a look at the previous videos. It will be clear.
It will be very clear, How is information arriving?
This is very good incentive to keep practicing.
Yes, definitely. And if the tale is true, I want to share with all of you, dear family, apparently, as far as I know, the way Abhiññā died was, oh man, it was like just pure elegance. As far as I remember, a long time ago, I remember that since I will recheck it. But apparently, the way she died, she was on her bed, and in front of her there was a Buddha, small rupa, small statue. She turned to the side and asked the family member that was with her, and asked her. She said, "Can you please offer some flowers to the Buddha?" I mean, I want to cry, man. And she says, "Can you please offer some flowers to the Buddha?" And then the lady took some flowers, offered the flowers to the Buddha. She smiled, and at that moment she passed away. So we can imagine the elegance, the skillfulness of that happening. So if that was so, I don't know if she was totally enlightened, nobody knows. If she was not totally enlightened, definitely she reborn in a very, very good destination. and she might continue developing her mental ability, which was very heightened or very high already in terms of wisdom and Abhiññās and all this. But imagine, just to recall this way of dying, please, darling, offer some flowers to the Buddha. She smiled, and with that smile of joy and appreciation and gratitude, she passed away. I mean, it's just to remember, it's like humbling.
Thank you.
Yes, someone else. What do we bring home after this session, my dear family?
It's just that I wanted to say that Paula could review the concept of Sakayaditi and Sasadaditi.
Mm-hmm. In order to understand better the rebirth process?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
What can you tell us about, why did it caught your attention? What can you tell us about it?
Sakayaditi is about the belief of personality.
Yes.
And Sasadaditi is about the belief of eternality. Eternal, yes. To be eternal.
That something will linger forever. And it is considered, both of them, they are considered kind of non-wisdom or wrong view about reality, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So you mean regarding to the question that Paula was saying about if something stays on, are you linking it to it?
Yes, about if you dead and you keep the experience of memories
of previous life
or the personality.
Yes. Yes, actually, good. Thank you very much. Very good reminder. Let's keep in mind that if something moves from life to life, it is only the natural process that is pushing the energy, the potentiality that changes from one life to the other. But there is no soul. It is definitely was taught by the Buddha as something non-existent, only exists as a concept. Self, soul, me, I, me, mine. It's actually just concepts that we use to move on in worldly sense, but ultimately it is just atoms moving, and it is just mental units happening because of causes and effect. And as long as we have an idea that something of me will linger later on, or stay later on, or will develop further, it will be considered a wrong point of view regarding the nature of nature. Yes. Thank you, Raúl, for Luis Raúl for the reminder. Thank you so much. This reminder goes towards contemplating one of the essential key elements of the Buddha's teaching, which is anatta, the non-self nature of this natural process. It doesn't belong to us. It's just doing what it knows how to do. Nature is just flowing without us really having much say on it. Cause and effect, we can change and modify the causes, but the effects are just responsibility of nature. Thank you. Someone else, what do we bring home? How does this information about the Abhiññās and mental powers are received, or any other question before we close the session?
We just want to thank you both for your efforts and wish you the best of luck in this new stage of your
thank you very much.
We really appreciate that you're teaching from where you are, and well, this class is always a blessing for us. And from what we learned today, kind of just I'm more amazed with the possibility and potential of the mind. And it's just beautiful to see how can we raise the level of perception and usage of our minds to the good. And well, thank you again for your time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Paula says thank you. Well, okay, my dear family, then we close. Fabi, you open your mic. You have something?
No, just
Thank you very much for the session.
Oh, thank you everybody. Thank you, and we continue next Sunday. If something arises, you can send the questions to the chat with Charana, and then we post for everyone, and we continue the exploration. May this information finally, as Alex was saying, be translated into more hope and more desire to cultivate ourselves, hopefully for the nobility, more and more the nobility, love, compassion, detachment, understanding, and wisdom. I think we know what we need to do, and all this information will be fulfilling more and more pieces of the puzzle until hopefully one of these days, bam, the real understanding comes and free ourselves and the people that will get in contact from the suffering that we are all facing in many fronts. So may peace and cordura, how you say, common sense prevail, and take the best precautions that normal precautions we need, and we continue in this adventure in samsara.
Okay,
Good luck.
So let's share merits. For these 2 hours that we have been putting our energy and our attention on the exploring the Dhamma and sharing with each other. So may this merit be conditions for our attainment of Nibbana, of the highest peace and happiness, and also we share this merit to all beings. So,
Idano punyam Nibbana sam pacheyo hotu. Idano punyam Nibbana sam pacheyo hotu. Idano punyam Nibbana sam pacheyo hotu. Compartimos, we share with all beings. Idano punyam sabbasatanam pajimam. Idano punyam sabbasatanam pajimam. Idano punyam sabbasatanam pajima. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Especially for all the people who is experiencing stress, fear regarding the actual situation, and our hearts go with all the support and loving kindness to all the families that have experienced some loss in their family. May we all understand and take the nature of the world as our fuel to continue developing. The Buddha was unequivocally saying, suffering in the world exists, and there might be more coming. So the more prepared we are with wisdom, understanding, and peace with nature, the best. Thank you, everyone. See you very soon. And we continue. Gambare, gambare.
see you.
Whoever gets the Abhiññā in this week, please let us know how it feels. If you listen to the realms or you saw the minds of others, let us know how it feels. Thank you very much. See you soon.
See you.
I love you. Thank you, dear family.